Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today, we're going to begin our scholarly examination of Wasteland, one of the best anthology comics ever. Very odd anthology comic. Even more odd that DC Comics put this out. It's crazy. When I show you the contents of this, I don't know what DC was thinking. It is like pretty much like an underground comic. I mean, they can't show, nasty sex and certain things because of DC. But just the fact that such idiosyncratic art styles, such crazy dark plots, it's amazing that DC put this out, and thank God they did. I bought these off the stands. At the time, it was weird. I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever. I mean, this is after the Watchmen. I guess DC was feeling a little like experimental, that maybe they could make money from putting out something, that wasn't cookie cutter. But this is so beyond just not cookie cutter. These stories are amazing. It came out in December 1987 and ran 18 issues. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to look at 3 issues per episode. So there'll be 6 videos of Wasteland. I wish there was more. This comic is amazing. It was the brainchild of editor Mike Gold, who had recently left First Comics for DC. And he knew Del Close and John Ostrander from the Chicago scene. Both of those guys were in the theater in Chicago. And I mean, I don't know if you guys know about Del Close. They made documentaries about this guy. This guy was just a legend in, from SCTV. He was like a Johnny Appleseed for improv comedy. He'd go to other cities and help them launch, like The Committee, the Toronto version of SCTV, all these other famous improv groups he had a hand in back in the 50s and 60s when it was just a new concept. And he just worked with all the guys from National Lampoon and SCTV. Just a legendary guy. And John Ostrander, you probably know from all of his comic work, starting at First Comics, doing Grimjack, and moving to DC, doing Suicide Squad, doing so many comics over the years. But he started off in the Chicago theater world. And so he knew Del Close. And Mike Gold figured these are the 2 weird guys I'm going to get to do this comic. This kind of rough anthology, even though it's always written by either Del Close or John Ostrander, it's still, it's an anthology comic, 3 stories per issue. But, Mike Gold wanted a different kind of horror comic, not the twist endings that EC Comics made de rigueur for horror comics. Something more like internal horror. And they got 4 artists. So every issue has the same 4 artists. 1 does the cover, 3 do the interior, and then it rotates. The next issue, another guy does the cover, and then the other 3 guys do the interiors. So it was an interesting idea for an anthology in many different aspects. But it's just really good. The stories are amazing. We shall see. Let's crack these open. God, I love these comics. I loved them when they were coming out. They blew me away. And just rereading these now for the first time in probably 20 years, they blew me away again. How good they are. We start off with issue number 1, a beautiful George Freeman cover. George Freeman, you might know, did a lot of superhero comics. Started in Canada, doing Captain Canuck for Cumley Comics Group. He was a Canadian publisher that lasted a few years. Then moved to the States, or at least his work did. Did tons of stuff for DC, tons of stuff for Marvel. Never did anything for too long. But whatever he did draw was pretty damn nice. And in this comic, he really branches out. There's some amazing stuff here that I'm like, whoa, I never saw George Freeman draw that good. Okay, the first story, Fugu. Plot by John Ostrander and Del Close, with a script by John Ostrander. and art by David Lloyd. So he's going to be one of the regular artists. David Lloyd, of course, V for Vendetta fame, great English cartoonist, drew tons of stuff for all the English weeklies, and I think he still might be. I don't know. But he just has that great kind of film noir, shady style. And we see these two detectives. They show up to another fugu party. Apparently, this has been plaguing the city. This is the fourth one they've seen. There's this new drug, even though it's kind of a mushroom, that basically one taste will kill you. Supposedly you'll see God or feel like God for a split second and then you'll die. Everyone who takes fugu knows this, and yet people keep taking it. And these detectives are befuddled. They're like, wow, why the fuck did people do this? This is crazy. So they find 4 dead people around a table. The main detective's name is Vesper, and he seems to be the most confused. He's just like, I don't understand. Why would someone do this? And then it constantly cuts between flashbacking to when the fugu party was happening to the detectives looking at the corpses. This one guy kind of runs the party, this rich guy. And everyone's they're into it. I should mention, the colorist for most of the Wastelands, I think all of them, is Laverne Kinzierski. I'm probably saying that wrong. And pretty nice colors throughout, thanks to Laverne Kinzierski. Oh, I said it in a different way wrong, I'm pretty sure. So we have this one guy, pretty wealthy sportsman, athlete. And why would he take that shit? And he's just basically a daredevil. He's just like, there's nothing I haven't tried. That's why I'm tasting it. And as soon as he licks it, he has this total seizure and dies. The next guy to take it, because it's cutting back and forth in time, we find out from the detectives he's a basic junkie. He's had tons of arrests for drugs. And he just wants to take it because he's tried everything, every high. And he says, I just came for something that'll make me God, if only for a second. I've been through hell looking for that. So, this guy's been chasing the dragon his whole life. So this is supposed to be the ultimate high. So that's why he wants to do it. Of course, he tastes it. He dies. The woman who is the girlfriend of the athlete who took fugu first, the guy's trying to talk her out of it. He's like, it seems like you don't really want to take this. You don't have to. She's like, we swore an oath, me and George. And he's like, well, George is dead. You can't be held to that oath. And she thinks to herself, a painless death, the greatest high. And she lunges for it and just shoves a big chunk in her mouth. Of course, she dies. And then the rich guy who's, ran the party, he's just basically tired. The detective says he's filthy rich, powerful, could live as he wanted. Most people don't even get a chance to live that well. Why would he kill himself? And the other detective basically says, dude, stop worrying about this stuff. These people are just stupid. People do stupid shit all the time. It's not worth thinking about. And as he leaves, Vesper picks up the fugu and he sniffs it. And it looks like he's going to taste it. Or maybe not. Because that's where the story ends. I love that ending. Just like, you don't know. This story's called Rab. Or I guess it's R-Ab. And we see this future world. Very overcrowded. crazy science fiction future. This woman, she's doing pretty good. She's like, lives on the higher levels. She actually has her own little apartment that's the size of a big bathroom, which is quite the luxury in this world. And she's like, well, I want to move up to the upper floors where the rooms are bigger. Time for marriage, I guess. So she gets on her computer and goes cruising. And there's this vid monitor at a bar. And there's some dude there who's on the prowl. And they talk for a little. Like, what are you into? And it's like, we might have something here. Exchange data. And so they exchange earnings statements over the last 5 years with latest medical statements and testimonials. And if everything checks out, their lawyers will draw up prenuptials and they'll get married. So that's how, like, marriage is in the future. It's just about, you know, oh yeah, do you have some money? Do you have enough money so we can, our status can improve? So everything works out. They get married and they get to move. I guess with their combined salaries now, they move to the 300th level, the 300th floor, and they get this giant apartment for this future. They each have their own toilet. And he gets her a job as a CEO. And then he's got some connections at the baby center or whatever the hell it's called. And they get a baby. I guess in this future, I don't know, people just don't have sex and make their own babies. People have to wait in line for years. So they get a baby. And as soon as the baby arrives, they both realize they're terrible parents. The baby's crying, shitting its diaper. They're just like, you take care of him. No, you take care of him. I'm too busy doing my job. I've got a merger to deal with. And the baby's just shitting himself. And so they get a divorce. And they go to the government place, And they're like, well, one of you has to take custody. We don't have welfare anymore. You don't want that shit to come back. Someone's got to take care of this baby. And then the guy says, wait, but have you considered an RAB? RAB? And they're like, what's that? It's a retroactive abortion. And they're like, oh, that sounds great. And so he just opens a window in the skyscraper and throws the baby out the window. And the couple realize they don't really want to get divorced without the kid there to, ruin their marriage. But then as they leave, the guy says, hey, I still got that connection down at the child center. Maybe in a few years we'll try again and have another baby. They're so cute when they're small. Oh, man. Crazy. I didn't even mention, sorry, this is William Messner Loebs, the writer-artist of the great comic Journey, and who later went on to write, like, The Flash for DC. And his art cartoon is really not that good in here. It looks really rushed and sloppy. I love Journey. I'm a big fan of Journey. And, he always had a quirky art style. I mean, that's William Messner Loebs. But this is, like, some of these panels are just ugly and just... yeah. So kind of disappointing that the art in that one. Oh, this one's amazing. Sewer Rat. A bit of autobiography by Del Close, writer, assisted by John Ostrander. And now we meet the fourth cartoonist in this quartet of Wasteland contributors, Don Simpson of Megaton Man fame. And I guess Border Worlds, not that anyone really read that comic. And in the letter page, they kind of describe that, like, yeah, autobiography is, you play with the truth. It's not totally real. So these are all crazy stories from Del Close's life. We're going to be seeing these in the upcoming issues. And this one is nuts. Apparently, one night, I think, Chicago, 1964, Del Close was so fucked up on drugs that he put this acetylene torch, he mask taped it to his head, He put on waders and roller skates and went down to the Chicago sewers with a gun and was just rolling around shooting rats. He says, why am I shooting rats? I like rats. So he's tripping hard. I mean, he doesn't really even know where he is. But he knows enough to kill all these rats. He's still got good aim. And he's just tripping all of his hallucinations. I like this how he finds a piece of paper on the ground. He says, hey, it's a map of the sewers. But then it turns into a wiring diagram. And then he says, no, it's a page from a dictionary. And then he realizes it's just a baby, a candy bar wrapper. It looks like Baby Ruth. There's one thing about this era in comics, when Baxter paper started becoming more prevalent, they could have better coloring. And even though Laverne Kanzerski's a pretty good colorist usually, a lot of the colorists back then it was almost like they were given too much. Too much stuff to deal with. So there's some garish coloring in some of those 80s Baxter comics. That's pretty goofy looking, kind of gaudy. But, you know, it was like for the first time they were given all these tools, and they went a little crazy sometimes. He sees his mom in a rocking chair down in the sewer. And he finally crawls out of the sewers to the street. And a newspaper blows in his face, and the headline is, Beatles Invade USA. He's just like, it's hard to tell hallucinations from reality in Chicago. And he goes skating off. See, this is what Del Close says, insofar as I can determine, the events in this story are true. So that's Del Close's attitude towards autobio. Reality is very subjective. Wasteland number 2, covered by Don Simpson. We start off with another of Del Close's reminiscences from his life. That's Entertainment. This one's drawn by William Esner Loebs. And I guess when Del Close was a youngster, he ran off with this, like, not a carnival, it was just one truck. This guy, Dr. Dracula, who would just do kind of like spook shows throughout the country. He'd pull up in a small town, rent out the local theater, and do this kind of carny horror stage act. Eat fire, just do various things. This is supposed to be young Del Close. Once again, I'm not digging this cartoony. It's a little bit, it's better than that first story in the first issue. Yeah, so Dr. Dracula, he works with this pretty lady, she's part of the act, and the strong man guy. So they set up the Chasm of Spasms. Living mummy, vampire beauty, shower of blood, hypnotism, ghost magic. So it's that kind of a huckstery show. At the ticket counter, we see this big thug-looking guy. And the woman says, oh, you're going to have to leave your gun at the counter. You can't bring that in the theater. So the show starts. Everyone's having a good time. And at one point, they do that old trick where they turn off the lights. He says something like, and now a plague of worms will descend upon you. And when the lights go out, all this pasta is thrown on the crowd's heads, you know, so they think it's worms. And the guy with the gun from earlier, he shit his pants. He was so scared. And he's really mad. He's like, you call this entertainment? I just shit my pants. So later on when the show's over, Dr. Dracula and Dell are going to the truck, and that guy shows up with his gun. He's got his gun back. And he's furious because they made him shit his pants. But he shoots that old film stock they have, which is very flammable. And it explodes. But nobody's hurt. Well, I think except for that guy. He's immolated. Fun stuff. Oh, this is a great one. Genghis Sings. This one's drawn by, this is written by both the guys and drawn by Freeman. Really nice art in this. And we see Genghis Khan, you know, doing what he did best. Conquering and killing hundreds and thousands of people. Cruel man. Now we cut away to this party, and this is kind of just a dig on Shirley MacLaine. I don't know if you guys remember, Shirley MacLaine was a famous actress. And then in the 70s and the 80s, she started writing all these loopy books about her past lives. And, you know, like kind of hippy-dippy stuff. She kind of became the butt of a joke, of many a joke, on talk shows and stuff. And so that's Shirley McKee. And it's this big fancy Hollywood party. All the beautiful rich people are there. So she says, okay, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to, you know, bring forth one of my past lives. I'm going to channel. And it looks like she hooks up with Genghis Khan. So now we cut back to the Genghis Khan era. And he just starts dancing and singing a song from one of his her old movies. And the Mongols are just like, what the hell is the boss up to? What the hell is he doing? Beautiful art, though, on this double-page spread. Look at this, all the faces. This is so much better than George Freeman's superhero stuff, which was great. He was a pretty unique superhero artist with his own style, but this stuff is really outstanding. Just great cartooning. So they're all happy with the Khan, with Genghis. They're like, wow, he's possessed by a goddess. He sounds like a woman when he sings. But he's freaking out. He's like, let me out of here. And he's like, don't laugh at me. He's like, we're not laughing at you. We're not mocking you. You're Genghis Khan. We serve you. So they ask Genghis what he saw when he, you know, traveled. He says, I was in a place of madness. They spoke in a tongue I didn't know. And they laughed at me. And one of his advisors says, my lord, what did you do? And then we cut back to the present. And I'm sorry, Genghis first says, I stopped their laughter. And then we see the Shirley McKee, and she's like, oh, thank God I'm back. And all these cops are around her. Freeze. She says, what's the meaning of this? Why am I covered in blood? And we see what Genghis Khan did in Shirley McKee's. They just killed. I mean, kind of hard to believe that little Shirley McKee here could kill all these people. But she did in the story. That's a nice panel right there. Well, it's not nice. It's the opposite of nice. Here's another story written by the two and David Lloyd art. And we see these child protection services people, a trio of them. They're joking around with each other before they have to interview this kid. This kid apparently thinks that his stepfather's a werewolf. Of course, they think, you know, he's confused. Maybe he's being abused. So he thinks his father's a werewolf. So for the next few hours, they interview him. They interview the mother and the father. When the stepfather comes in, he's very hairy. And one of them even, like, whispers a joke like, where's the wolf's bane? So they examine the boy. The woman interviews the mother, and the other guy interviews the stepfather. Doesn't seem like there's anything weird. But the woman said, who works for the Child Protection Services, she's like, something's off about this. I still just don't like, there's just something's off here. And the other guys kind of get mad. He was like, whatever, we gotta let him go. Let him go home. There's no evidence that he's being abused. And so she kind of says she has a final talk with the little boy. And she says, oh, you were probably pretty upset when your mom married this guy because you weren't, the special guy in the house anymore. Kind of Oedipal stuff. And he says, no, he's okay. It's just that he's a werewolf. You don't believe me, do you? And then the last caption just says, 1 month later, the boy was dead. Such a creepy, weird story. The way, a lot of it is these guys joking around and arguing about how to deal with this case. Of course you think the kid's crazy. And then it just ends like that. I like it. Okay, number 3. Cover by William Mesner Loeb. So this is a lot better than his interior art has been. I like this cover. Just a weird, I don't know what the hell's going on here. This fish man sees this weird alien skeleton holding a glowing orb. Very nice, though. Oh, this first story's so odd. So, it's a parody of Harvey Pekar, American Squalor. And it's drawn by Don Simpson. But he says, with apologies to Pekar and Crumb. So it's Don Simpson totally kind of drawing in this weird R. Crumb type style. I don't know if he succeeds. It does look a little more Crumb-like, obviously, than his normal work. But this says, as told mostly to Del Close and a little to John Ostrander. The character's name is Henry Pequod. So this is a total parody of American Splendor. This is the time, this is 88. This is when Harvey Pekar was going on David Letterman, kind of being the clown, being a clown. So we see that janitor that's in all the Harvey Pekar stories. I think he's got a different name in this one. Very odd how, this Harvey character keeps saying, I gotta leave early. I think my bed's on fire. I have this horrible suspicion. And it's not the first time. Then the next day, he gets that feeling a little earlier in the day. So he leaves a little earlier. And then it's intercut with these scenes of Harvey on David Letterman's show and the janitor kind of giving him grief about it. Like saying, you make a fool of yourself on that TV show. You're like a trained monkey on there. And not too well-trained monkey at that. So that day, he goes home even more early, and his bed is smoking. So he buys a fire extinguisher just to be better safe than sorry. And he's been telling this janitor that, Mr. Boot, he's been telling him all about this, yeah, I think my bed's going to be on fire. So he goes home extra early one day, and his bed is on fire. And Mr. Boot tells him, he's like, this is probably your fault. You're sending out fear. You're too paranoid. You're sending out so much fear that it's actually manifesting. And he says, my advice, learn not to be afraid. Or pretty soon you're going to start worrying that your bed is going to bite you. And he starts laughing. And Harvey does not find it funny. Sometimes he doesn't even go home anymore. And we just see the bed lying ominously there. And we just have all these panels of him laughing louder and louder. And Del Close reveals that this story is based on a monologue by Severn Darden, the SCTV comedian, or at least trained with SCTV. Here we have Dias Illa, written solo by John Ostrander, art by David Lloyd. And we see these two detectives driving around. It's close to midnight. And this guy that they've busted many times before, never had a gun, was never violent, they go to like ask him like, why are you breaking into that jewelry store? And he pulls around with a gun. And his partner saves him. He shoots him. So this junkie guy, he's not dead. Well, he's not quite dead. And he's ranting about basically apocalyptic end of the world stuff. He's like, God, he's fed up. He's abandoning the world. Tonight, midnight, everybody saved is going to go. If you're still here after midnight, the world becomes hell. And so the younger cop asks Stu is the older cop. He says, Stu, you go to church, right? You kind of believe this stuff. Is there any, what's the chance of this happening tonight? You know, could this be the end of the world? It's like, I don't know. Who knows? There's always clear signs indicating the end of the world, and we haven't seen them yet. And then all of a sudden, Stu doubles over. Massive coronary, and he's dead. So the young detective just starts walking around, and he's obviously kind of in a daze. He's fucked up. He sees these two guys mugging someone. And he just shoots them dead. He's not worried about being a cop anymore. And around him, he sees all of this debauchery and sin and, you know, just how shitty the world is. And when he walks down to the subway, he sees a man about to stab this woman. I guess he's trying to maybe coercing her into rape or something. And he shoots the woman in the head and says, go with God. Almost like he wants to send her off before midnight, you know? And then he jumps in front of the subway train right at midnight. Because he doesn't want to be, you know, stay in the world that's going to be hell. So then he wakes up in a hospital. And his arms and legs were chopped off by the train, but they saved his life. And it's just him going, ah. So, you know, it worked out. He is in hell. Next story is by George Freeman, written by the two guys. Well, the concept is by the two guys, script by John Ostrander. We see this serial killer has just killed the whole family, and he has this amazing feeling of peace. It's the first time he did it. He suspected that it'd have a sense of power, a rush, but he had no idea that it'd have this sense of peace, of tranquility, this feeling of love, this feeling of transcendence. It's almost like he's had a spiritual awakening from from taking people's lives. He's tenderly holding this dead woman and kissing her on the forehead. Pretty creepy stuff. I love this little touch. A cat comes to the door. It's probably the cat that lives here. And he says, if you were a dog, I would have had to kill you too. I don't know if that's because, like, dogs go to heaven and cats have no souls. So I don't know why, but I love that little touch. He spies this beautiful woman at the subway. He starts following her around. And he knows that he's not fooling himself. He knows that the cops will catch him one day. But he basically says to himself, I never want to feel dead again until I'm in the grave. Basically implying that until he killed that family, he felt dead inside. Now he's truly living for the first time, and he doesn't want to stop. Yeah, some great George Freeman faces in here. Some of these characters are really well drawn. I like that. So he basically says, before I kill someone, I want to meet them and become intimate with them. I want to know everything about them. And so he goes up to that beautiful woman and gives her a rose. So basically he's gonna get to know her and kill her. Creepy business. So there you have it, Wasteland number 1 through 3. Oh man, I'm so excited to get to read these again. I mean, I always could have read them, but I like having this channel. It gives me an excuse to reread stuff, even though I have a giant pile of stuff I haven't read. But God, these are great, guys. And man, talk about easy to find. These were in quarter bins for decades. I bet they're still in dollar bins now. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't understand why they're not collector's items. They're such great comics. So bizarre that DC published this. Yeah, you just saw the 3 issues. It's like, isn't that weird? That in 1987, DC would put this out on good paper too. It was like, so if they were going to lose, they were going to lose big. But I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did. And in a few episodes, we'll come back with the second round. And I can't wait. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you here next time at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.